What's up, everyone? Welcome back for the next game of bowling. Alright, so continuing on here, giving my analysis of 2020 overall, different events that happened in my personal life throughout the year of 2020, and just shit regarding my YouTube channel, including updates and shit like that. So, yeah, just a few different things to get through today. I forgot to change my ball to the smiley one. But yeah, so continuing on with that, of course, this is a tradition that I do, every year, where I just play Brunswick Pro Bowling at the end of the year and give my overall thoughts on how I think the year went and all that good shit. And just different events and shit that happened throughout the year and all that good shit. So, yeah. I gotta say, one of the more interesting things that happened this year, that I'm kind of glad happened this year, I mean, I'm not really glad about it, obviously, but is being able to work during a pandemic. I think that was a very interesting experience, and one that I will carry with me for the rest of my life and will never forget. Because it was genuinely an interesting experience. And, say what you will about the coronavirus. I mean, there's basically nothing good that came out of the coronavirus. I'll be the first one to admit that. But it was a very interesting event in our history, I feel like. People will be studying this event, historians will be studying this event for many, many, many generations. Studying how the government handled it, and maybe how the government abused their power, and how some people just were able to blindly accept it because of the fear of coronavirus. But I think, if nothing else, the coronavirus event of 2020 was very interesting, if nothing else. It was very interesting on a lot of different levels. And being able to work at a restaurant during that pandemic, I think, was a interesting experience. Because luckily for me, I've been working at the same place for 6 years, so I have very good job security. So the owner trusts me to a certain extent. I still think he doesn't 100% trust me with certain things, but he trusts me enough to be able to at least, do my job effectively and efficiently. So I was able to stay working during the pandemic, which was freaking sweet. So I was luckier than a lot of other people who lost their jobs during the pandemic lockdowns and shit. I was extremely lucky in the fact that I was able to continue working, because our restaurant, even during the worst of the lockdowns, was still able to do carryouts. Oh, bless me. So yeah, we were still able to do carryouts and shit like that. So luckily I was still able to work. I mean, granted, I had reduced hours and shit, but it was still good, I was still making money and shit, so that's good. Plus, the managers, basically, during the pandemic, like during the worst of the lockdowns, the owner of the restaurant said that he wanted only people working during the pandemic that he knew he could trust to do a good job and shit like that. So, of course, I was one of them. I was, like, the only host, basically, for the first little while of the pandemic anyway. I was the only host that was actually working. And then there was, like, one or two other servers who were working, and then all the managers were still working. So up at my host stand, they decided to put out a tips jar, which I was a little bit irritated with at first, because, like, that's something that the hosts have not been able to do in the past, but now that the managers' paychecks depend on it, now we can suddenly have a tip jar up front, So that irritated me a little bit at first, but I'm like, okay, I'll let it slide. But then, after the pandemic, they decided to, after the lockdowns were lifted and we went back to having dine-in, granted with a little bit of reduced capacity, not too bad. Then my tip jar suddenly went away, and I'm like, whoa, hang on a second. If we can have a tip jar when your guys' paychecks depend on it, but suddenly when your paychecks no longer depend on it, then the tip jar disappears, that's bullshit. So I called them out on it. I'm like, that's fucking bullshit. So then, luckily, they were able to, see the light of day in that regard, and they let me keep the tip jar. But I'm like, whoa, no. If we're allowed to have a tip jar when your guys' paychecks depend on it, but not when your paychecks don't depend on it, That's bullshit. Because basically during the pandemic, basically everyone was a host. Because at the restaurant that I work at, hosts are responsible for bussing tables, taking carry-out orders over the phone, seating people at tables, and putting carry-out orders together in the back. You know, putting the food together. And shit like that. Not necessarily cooking it, but, you know, because we have cooks, obviously. But they're required to, you know, take the food out of the, you know, window, basically, and put it together. So, basically, during the pandemic, since we were doing only carryouts, basically everyone was a host, so we all shared all the tips that we got on carryout orders, whereas normally only the hosts get tips on carryouts and shit. But since the managers and shit were basically doing host shit, you know, like putting the food together and taking carryout orders and shit, same thing that I was used to doing. So really the pandemic didn't change too much for me, other than I actually had less responsibilities to be responsible for, because I didn't have to bus tables or seat people. So my job didn't really change that much during the pandemic. But yeah, I was pretty pissed about that. And there have been a couple of other things that I've been really pissed off with the managers about over the past year. I just really feel like sometimes they lack basic common sense and situational awareness, and it is really irritating at times. And again, I understand that sometimes it's not fair for me to get angry at them for not doing things the way that I think they should. It's not necessarily fair for me to get angry at them for that, but at the same time, you know, I just don't see the sense in the way that they are doing things, and it can just be frustrating sometimes, you know? So, yeah. There have been a couple times throughout this year where they've just really, really pissed me off. But I will say this. They were dealt... The management staff at our restaurant, they were dealt a shitty hand with the coronavirus situation. They were dealt a really shitty hand, like the world's shittiest hand. I mean, just absolutely terrible. So, I gotta say, overall, they did an excellent job dealing with the coronavirus thing. And yeah, the managers may do shit that pisses me off sometimes, you know? They may do shit that I don't think makes any sense, or it seems irritating to me or whatever. And I understand that it's not really that fair for me to get mad at them for not doing things the way that I think they should. Even though sometimes I think I could do a much better job at times. There are times when I also think that they do a much better job than I would do in any given situation. So that kind of flip-flops from time to time. You know, sometimes I think I would do better, sometimes I don't think I would do better. So it just depends on the situation, I suppose. But sometimes they just, again, do shit that I don't think makes any sense, or do shit that I do not think is smart, you know? Or they fail to do things that I think would be smart in certain circumstances. And it can just be irritating at times, you know? But it is what it is, you know? Shit is what shit is at the end of the day. And I really do feel like overall, especially given the shitty circumstances that they had to deal with, because they were really shitty, you know? I mean, hell, you know? Who could have predicted a fucking pandemic, you know? Fucking sucks. So, I gotta say, overall, I think the management staff at our restaurant did an excellent job of dealing with the coronavirus pandemic. I think they did an absolutely phenomenal job dealing with the pandemic overall. Again, not perfect, because no one's perfect, but I think they did an excellent job overall. Again, they were dealt a really shitty situation. I think the owner and the management staff at our restaurant overall did an excellent job handling dealing with the pandemic this year. I think they did an absolutely excellent job. There was a lot that was asked of them, and they definitely rose to the occasion overall, you know? Let it never be said, I will say this, let it never be said that the management staff at our place is lazy. They are not lazy. They may not always do the smartest things, but they are definitely not lazy. They always work hard, and at the end of the day, I can respect that. You know, I would much rather deal with someone who's stupid than deal with someone who's lazy. You know, if you're at least making an effort and putting in some hard frickin' work, at the end of the day, I can respect that, you know? You may not always do the smartest work, but if you're at least working hard, I can respect that. And the managers at our restaurant do genuinely work hard. You know, so I can genuinely appreciate that. On a basic level. It's just sometimes they do shit that really pisses me off. But I gotta say, overall, they rose to the occasion. Did more than what could have ever been asked of them. I mean, again, they were dealt the world's shittiest situation with having to deal with the coronavirus pandemic. And they rose to the occasion big time. So, a lot of respect to them this year. They really had to work their asses off, and that is, you know, on a fundamental level, I can appreciate that. Even again, if they do shit sometimes, like with the whole tip jar thing, that pisses me off sometimes. That I still appreciate all the hard work that they put in, and that is very much so worth noting and worth recognizing as well. So yeah, I think overall they did a fantastic job this year. I gotta say, this year, my paycheck actually rose a little bit this year because my pay went from $9.25 an hour to $10 an hour, which is freaking awesome. So now I'm making a little bit more money than I was before, so that's pretty awesome. So yeah, thank you, JB, for that, even though my taxes are going up exponentially because JB's a fucking idiot. But yeah, I mean, my paycheck's going up too because of JB's stupid ass idea to raise the minimum wage to $15 a fucking hour. We'll see how many jobs that kills. So, yeah, thanks, JB, you idiot. You know, it's like, would you rather have a job that pays you less, or would you rather have no job at all? Because, you know, again, that's why people who, like, say, oh, yeah, we should get a $15 an hour minimum wage. That's a dumbass fucking idea. Do you know how many jobs that will kill? Because employers won't be able to afford to pay people $15 an hour, you fucking idiots. Would you rather have a job that pays you less, or have no fucking job at all, you idiot? Because a $15 an hour minimum wage will kill a shit ton of jobs, you fucking idiots. Take a fucking economics class, you morons. Like, seriously, goddamn. Some people are just so stupid sometimes. That's why, even as someone who works a minimum wage job, I do not advocate for a $15 an hour minimum wage. That is a stupid fucking idea. It just is. I'm sorry, it is a stupid fucking idea. You know. Luckily, though, I work at a place that I have extremely good job security, so if I'm still working there within the next couple of years, I might want us to just stay there, because, I mean, hell, I could almost make a living off of that. I actually probably could make a living off of a minimum wage job, of a part-time minimum wage job where I make $15 an hour. I could probably live off of that, you know? Just saying. But yeah, anyway, it's still pretty fucking stupid, though, overall. I'm just saying, for the overall market and shit like that, it's a fucking stupid idea. Alright, well, either way, that's enough of that for now, so stay tuned. We'll see how the next part of this game goes, and until then, peace out.